This is Sportsline.
Hey there, Sportsline on your television on a busy Monday here in the Music City. One of the Nashville true sports icons and legends, at least in the coaching business, Rick Byrd, has announced his retirement. He called a team meeting this morning, as he has done so many times since 1986 when he was hired at Belmont. But this one was different because this one was the final one, and it was not an April Fool's joke today. Rick Byrd sitting his players down and telling them that a month ahead of his 66th birthday, he is going to retire. Focus on family, focus on his new grandson, do some of the other things in life that he enjoys while he's got great health. And he's walking away from the game, from the team, and the university that he loves. 33 seasons at Belmont, 38 years as a head coach overall, 41 seasons as a college basketball coach of some way, shape, or form. 805 victories, has become the 26th person ever in college basketball to top the 800-win milestone. He is the 12th winningest coach in NCAA Division I history at this point. He led Belmont to 2 NAIA Final Fours, and then the school had at the time, what many people thought was the crazy idea to try to leap from the NAIA to Division I NCAA basketball. There have been roughly 50 schools to do that since Belmont has done it, or in the time that Belmont has done it over the last 20 years or so. Almost all of those schools have ended up having to fire their head coach at some point because it's just a different level of basketball. Rick Byrd became a Hall of Famer through the transition because they go from an NAIA powerhouse into a team that dominated the Atlantic Sun by the time they left that league, and now is right there with Murray State as the cream of the crop in the OVC. 9 conference regular season championships, 7 conference tournament titles, 8 NCAA tournament appearances. Of course, that first NCAA tournament win over Temple just a couple of weeks ago. Rick Byrd has done amazing things at Belmont. There is no question about it. He will be missed within that program. He will be missed at that school. And just an anecdote of what he meant for the university as a whole. Consider this. My first real exposure to both Rick Byrd and Belmont was 13 years ago, just over 13 years ago, in the first week of the NCAA tournament. It was 2006. And I was, at the time, a senior in college at the University of Illinois, and I was covering the Illinois basketball team in the NCAA tournament, first and second round games, out in San Diego for my job at the time with the Illini Sports Network. And I get out there, and there's this other school there named Belmont that really nobody in San Diego had heard much about. And so you start kind of doing the research because they're right there in the pod with you, right? And you find out that Belmont is the small school, Nashville, Tennessee, most known for its music performance major. Its most famous fan and pseudo-alum is Vince Gill, even though he never actually attended school there. He just got an honorary degree. And they had this head coach, Rick Byrd, who'd been there since 1986, helped transition them in to Division I basketball, and this was Belmont's first ever NCAA tournament. They played UCLA and they got hammered. But a couple years later, they lost to Duke at the buzzer. And they later played North Carolina and won. And they beat UCLA later on, this year in fact, with Rick Byrd's teams. And they just kept winning all those conference championships and into the NCAA tournament all the time. And guess what? All that exposure of winning those conference tournaments and being on the brackets on Selection Sunday and going back to the tournament and playing in March Madness over and over again. Yeah, it was great for the Belmont basketball program. People figured out who Rick Byrd was and how good of a coach he is. But it was also great for Belmont The school's enrollment has more than tripled in the time that it went from NAIA to NCAA Division I. 20-year span, more than tripled. Think about that. It is not just a school that people are like, Belmont, where's that anymore? It is a known commodity. And that's because of what Rick Byrd did. He was hired in 1986 to be the guy to try to compete with the crosstown behemoth that was Lipscomb in NAIA basketball. And he has taken Belmont to heights that no one could have possibly imagined. And when he won 800 games this year, think about the people who were first to congratulate you. It was Coach K, Roy Williams, Jim Boeheim. I mean, college basketball royalty. They all know about Rick Byrd. And frankly, he could have been them if he wanted to. He's that good of a coach, and he is that well respected. But he loved Nashville. He loved this state. He loved Belmont. He loved his teams. And he just kept doing what he was doing in Belmont. And he did it better than anybody. And he built that program, and he built the skill, and he built the school into something nobody really ever imagined. And I mean, there are a lot of other things going on at Belmont too. It's not just Rick Byrd, and he would be the first person to tell you that. But there is no denying that a huge part of the university's growth ties in to making the leap to NCAA Division I basketball. And they only could have done that, and they certainly could have only done it successfully because of Rick Byrd. So congratulations to him. And it's also really neat, I think, from my perspective, that he gets to do it by going out on top. So many guys, so many coaches especially, basketball, coaching, their teams, that's what they know, and they can't imagine life without that. And so they don't really have a life without that. They're just consumed by winning the next game. And that was never really Rick Byrd. He was always about the relationships. He was always about doing it the right way. Never a sniff of trouble in that program. All of his players graduate. All of them. I was talking to President Fisher, Bob Fisher, the president of Belmont University today. He said he thinks there may have been one player in Byrd's 33 years that did not graduate, although he's not completely sure because he does know for a fact that player was back in school after he left the program taking classes towards a degree. He's just not sure if he finished or not. Think about that for a second. There are a lot of programs out there that have guys not graduate every year. He maybe had one player in 33 seasons. It was a focus on the man or the kid who became a man. It was a focus on academics. It was a focus on being good citizens. They ran the program exceptionally well, and then on top of that, they won. And there's people out there who don't believe you can do all that. Rick Byrd is living proof that you can. And for that reason, there are a lot of people I know in college basketball today who traded text messages back and forth who would tell, I know Coach Byrd for a fact, but also just in conversation with me, kind of go out of their way, that today was a bad day for college basketball because you lost one of the really good ones. It's hard to argue with that. But I am thrilled for Rick Byrd in that he is able to do it on his own terms. Because so often these guys who are consumed in what they're doing, they can't see the rest of life. And he always did it while keeping his family in the forefront. He goes everywhere with his wife, Cheryl. She's great. He's going to try and be as good on the tennis court as she is now that he's done. He's going to golf more with his buddies. Has a lot of friends that he likes to do with that. They want to travel more. They've got, obviously, kids. One here locally. They've got kids elsewhere. He has a new grandson in Oklahoma. He wants to go down and spend time with him and his family there. He now gets the chance to do that. And it's great to see that at 65 because he's healthy. I mean, if you've seen him on a tennis court, which I have, you know he can get around. You know he's still an athlete at this point. And he's going to be able to do all that and truly enjoy it now without the stress and the rigors of being a college basketball coach and the pressure of trying to get back to March and win when you get there and then not sleep as you prepare for your next game, as he did during the NCAA tournament. He gets to enjoy the other parts of life now, and that's really, really cool. Coming up on the program tonight, we can hear from you guys if you'd like to participate in what might be a little bit of a love fest for Coach Byrd tonight. But we'll also take you to his retirement press conference this afternoon. We'll hear from Dr. Fisher, Scott Corley, the athletic director, who has the unenviable task of trying to now fill the shoes of Rick Byrd as the head coach of the Belmont men's basketball team. And, of course, hear from Rick Byrd himself. We'll also dive into the NCAA tournament brackets a bit. Coach Byrd in studio last night on the Electric Power Company Sunday Sports Central to help us break down some of the brackets. He will help us do that here on the program as well. Possibly some Lipscomb talk as well as they get set for the NIT Final Four tomorrow night against Wichita State. We'll take our first break. We'll come back and get into the Rick Byrd retirement press conference right after this.